Good evening. Oh, come on now. He did say I was a preacher. Call and response will help me get out of your way. Good evening. Hey, right. If you can't say amen, say all right. On behalf of men and women from inner city and rural communities across the country, on behalf of those living in poverty or simply trying to make life better for their families, on behalf of my 7-week-old cousin, Glenn Molex III, who was tragically killed during a drive-by shooting, my brothers and sisters, whenever I'm given the opportunity to speak, I always make it a point to mention his name so that people will know he was here. My brothers and sisters, I greet you in the endless promise and potential that all of us possess, which for me is the very essence of a strong progressive movement. And before I move too far along, let me also thank Josh Silver and all of the leaders who worked to make this conference a success. Now, I'm willing to bet that when they said you would have to hear from a preacher at 10:30 at night, I'm willing to bet whether you are a person of faith or not, somebody said a prayer. God, please don't let this be a long-winded preacher. Well, your prayers have been answered. And I'm going to move along quickly, not only because of time, but because I am hopped up on Red Bull and coffee. Amen. When I was asked to share with you this evening, I took the opportunity to visit the Free Press Conference website and read about many of the leaders gathered in this room. I scrolled through the page and was able to read the bios of men and women of all ages working in their own way on progressive issues that will change the lives of people across this country, both now and for generations to come. But while I was reading, I found myself asking a few questions. As I read about all that people are doing to open doors of opportunity and pave the way for diversity so that our media is a fair representation of our country, a question came to mind. And I began to ask myself, I wonder if any of these leaders ever get tired. I wonder if at times do any of them get so frustrated by obstacles and institutional bureaucracy that they sometimes want to give up. Yes, I wonder if they ever get tired. And if they get tired in their fight for women's rights, if they get tired on the journey towards diversity and fairness, if their faith starts failing in the pursuit of health care for all people, protecting the environment, fighting for immigrant rights, and ending an unjust war, if they find themselves fatigued because they are overworked and underpaid while fighting against well-funded propaganda machines of Rupert Murdoch, Rush Limbaugh, and Fox News, yes, I wonder if the men and women attending this conference ever find themselves discouraged, disappointed, tired, and frustrated. And if that were to happen along their journey, then where do they turn for encouragement? Who is there to remind them that they are not alone? Who are the leaders they turn to in order to renew their strength, find new inspiration, and the will to keep fighting? Are they able to say that others in the progressive movement are there to hold them up and be strong when they are weak? You see, my brothers and sisters, I believe that these are critical questions we have to ask. Because if we are going to be successful in changing the course of events in our media and on other critical issues in the progressive community, it is extremely important that all of us are encouraged along the way, that we are able to renew our strength and know that we are supported by others in the community, because we can achieve far more through unity than we can ever achieve on our own. And since the futures of so many people across the country are dependent upon our success, since there are children whose dreams of a better life are tied to our will to keep fighting, I believe the critical question is this: what can we do to build a stronger movement for change? What do we have at our disposal that can help all of us achieve our goals? And my brothers and sisters, I've come to the conclusion that we can find the strength to keep going, the courage to withstand opposition, be inspired to make our dreams reality, create a vision that can be achieved, and have the determination to succeed through unity. Now, what does that mean? Just about all of us would agree that unity is a good thing. But what does it look like when you see it? Well, I'm glad you asked. In the words of John Maxwell, in his book, Leadership is an Art, unity is made real when we are able to come together in spite of our differences. Unity is evident when we spend more time focusing on our common interests instead of critiques that create dissension and distractions. Unity allows us to accept that even though we come from different places, have different agendas, different goals, and different ways to bring about change, all of us are trying to get to a similar place that makes life better for the people we serve. Unity. Unity allows us to say that even though there are times when we may not agree, we are still on the same side. And I will stand with you in the fight to achieve our dreams. Because the greatest gift we have in the pursuit of change is each other. Somebody say unity. Amen. You see, obstacles are the things you see when you take your eyes off your goals. And whenever we find ourselves debating over which organization's logo was not included on a flyer, whenever we find ourselves engaging in the politics of this organization getting more money than that organization, whenever we find ourselves arguing over the speaking order at a press conference, we must be mindful of the harsh reality that tonight across this country, there are children who will sleep on city streets. Every 3 hours, a child will die through the gun violence. Families will struggle to put food on the table. And these are the people who are waiting for us to show up and demand power for the powerless. They are the reason. They are the reason why failure is not an option. Somebody say unity. Yes, my brothers and sisters, unity allows us to build power and demand that together we become co-creators in the construction of a new table that is not owned by special interest groups with deep pockets and shallow values. We don't want a seat at the table of corporations whose goals are only to increase their profit margins. But we want to create a new table where people are invited not because of their status or their stature, and regardless of whether they are poor, middle class, or working class, but simply because they are worthy of respect and deserve to be treated with respect. Yes, and when we gather around this new table, we can send a message to self-serving power brokers that it's time to stop feeding egos and starving communities. Somebody say unity. Okay, now I know what you're thinking. You're saying, yeah, we hear you, Reverend Toon, but how do you create this unity you're talking about? Yeah, we're not just going to walk out of here holding hands and singing Kumbaya. So how do we create this unity? What is the starting point? Well, that's another good question. The first thing it means is that we must understand our place in history. The first thing it means is that what Cicero once said that if you don't know what happened before you were born, then you will forever remain a child. My brothers and sisters, we did not get to this place in history on our own. But we are standing on the shoulders of men and women who came before us and sacrificed in the fight for women's rights. Those who gave of themselves to achieve voting rights. The men and women of all races and religions who gave their lives in the fight to end segregation. And because we have now answered the call to use our gifts and talents in the ongoing fight for freedom, each of us has been grafted into this garment for justice that is woven together by the unity of men and women who opened doors so that we could be here on this day and at this time. Somebody say unity. Now, as a preacher, I would be remiss if I did not address yet another issue impacting the progressive movement. Like many of you, when I turn on my television and read the newspaper, I see stories of how religion and people of faith are increasingly becoming a part of the progressive movement. Organizations across the country are looking for ways to engage people of faith in their work and asking them to embrace progressive issues as moral concerns. And I am well aware of the problems that some have when mixing religion with the work of non-religious institutions. I understand that there is apprehension in the minds of some when it comes to building relationships in the religious community, because we cannot ignore the harsh historical reality of how some have used their interpretations of sacred text to perpetuate discrimination, reject people who don't believe what they believe, justify violence, greed, hatred, and injustice. But just like the misleading images we see coming from the media, there's another side to the story. In spite of the images portrayed by the media of those who preach prosperity and pad their pockets with profits made off the backs of the poor, in spite of what we have seen of self-proclaimed religious leaders demanding that people live up to moral standards they even find it hard to live up to themselves, we must remember that these people are not the majority in the religious community, and they do not speak for the majority. We must remember there are people of faith across this country committed to fairness, freedom, and equality. People that have committed their lives to liberating the poor rather than prostituting their pulpits for a paycheck. There are people of faith who realize that sometimes the best way to pray is with your mouth closed and let God do the talking. Yes, my brothers and sisters. In order to achieve the promises of the progressive movement, we need people of faith who understand that when they get down on their knees and pray, at some point they will have to stand up for something that is greater than themselves. They will have to stand up and fight for the poor, stand up and fight for fairness, stand up and fight for equality, stand up and fight corporate greed. Yes, if you are a person of faith, the tragic conditions and injustices endured by so many in our society should make you get down on your knees and pray. But at some point, make sure you have the backbone to stand up and allow that same God to use you and make this country a better place for all people. Somebody say unity. And finally, my brothers and sisters, in all of our efforts to build a unified progressive movement, we must have a vision. Somebody say vision. Proverbs 29:18 says that where there is no vision, the people perish. We must remember why we made up our minds to be a part of the progressive movement. Every now and then, we must recall that moment in our lives or that person who inspired us to join the fight for change. And then we have to cast a vision of a better society that will be embraced by all cultures. A vision that calls for equality no matter what your skin color or your income. A vision that says if we stand together, we can achieve great things for our families and future generations. You see, someone once said that if you call yourself a leader and no one's following, then you're just taking a walk. My brothers and sisters, there are people across this country waiting on each of us to show up. And our assignment is simply to lead them on the journey towards equality, fairness, and justice for all people. And if we remain steadfast and unmovable in our commitment to a unified progressive movement, nothing and no one can stand in our way. God bless you.